Hello, I'm Bob the Bookerer and welcome to my channel. And today I'm going to be talking about another book from the International Booker long list, which is The Birthday Party by Laurent Mauvignier and translated by Daniel Levin Becker. And this book, as a starter, I mean, I will be going into spoilers soon. And this is a book that's not very easy to talk about without going into spoilers. So the pre-spoiler part might be relatively brief. But in this bit here, before I go into spoilers, I just want to say I adore this book. I think this is so cleverly done. I think it's a really powerful book. And I think for me, that power comes from the sort of a really great marriage between the writing style and the sort of form and function thing, right? Of the writing style really adds to what this book is doing and has a real place to play, a role to play within the book. And I think it's fascinating because it's a book that I think in many ways I can see. I know there have been some people who have really not enjoyed this book, and I get why. It makes sense to me how the style of this might completely turn someone cold. But for me, I think this completely worked. And what I will say is, I sort of said a couple of other places, I think, but it's a book where the first time I tried reading it, I was not, I was a bit sleepy. And, you know, when you're sort of, your mind's not fully up for taking in a book and a new style, it was that. And I was like, no, actually, this is a book to really give yourself time with, to really fall into the rhythm of the book. And so when I tried the book the second time, because I'd only read a couple of pages, so I sort of started again a couple of days later, and that was exactly the tonic I needed basically to be able to do this. So I think it's a really beautiful and interesting book. And the pre-spoiler part that I'm basically going to say is what this book is about. So the core idea is that there is a birthday party that has been planned, and this is happening in the French countryside. And there are people all kind of coming to the house at various times. So, you know, some people who obviously already live there, some people who are guests, but they're all coming sort of individually, pretty much. And so what we get therefore is their inner thoughts and their inner lives in the lead up to attending this party. And again, that might not sound like the most exciting thing off the jump, and it takes a bit of time to build into what it's going to do there. But we suddenly realize as the audience that nothing is quite as it seems, that actually something very, very wrong is about to happen. And when they are then at this birthday party that we now know is going to go wrong, we also know that they're going to be turning up individually. So we have this tension of thought that they are about to, you know, they're very blissfully on their way over. They may be thinking about how their workday went, or they may be thinking about, you know, a really critical conversation they want to have with someone at the table. And they're all kind of consumed by their own thoughts on their way to go and do something where they have no idea the pitfall that they're about to basically be greeted with. And so they all make their journeys in and are all caught. You know, I'm trying now very desperately to do this without spoiling things. And essentially what this then means is that they're all thrust into a really extreme situation. And within that extreme situation, one where they are not able to really do what they've been planning to. They're not able to celebrate, but equally it brings out some of the ugliest character traits within all of them and these really dark things within them. Some of them choose to be slightly more heroic. Some of them choose to be, or reveal themselves maybe to be a bit more cowardly. And so we have all of these really in-depth sort of psychological profiles basically of these people and what they do when they're faced with some of the darkest moments around them. And it also brings up all these family secrets and all these other things. And I found it so absolutely captivating. I think on a writing level, I think this is probably the thing I enjoyed most about the book, is it's written in these long, winding sentences. And at first that can be a bit difficult to get into the rhythm of, but actually eventually you see how the author is using those long sentences to control the pace of this book, control the speed at which you get information. So sometimes those long sentences are intentionally there as roadblocks of, you know, Patrice is thinking this and he's thinking this and then maybe this thing, all the while you know something else is happening in the background, and you know that you're not getting that information until Patrice finishes his thought. And so as a result, we are held off from certain information by the writer, which is powerful and really, really fun and incredible, I think. And at times, the speed of those long sentences just snowballs, and suddenly you've got this long sentence, maybe, you know, a page long, that is driving and driving and driving to this one particular point. And the thrill of that as a reader, I think, is incredible, that if you're really swept along in that, you just get caught up in this powerful speed of a sort of narrative. And I think it's really masterly on a writing level that the author is able to control that, step back and do, you know, and kind of then sort of take the pressure valve, you know, take the foot off the pedal for a bit there, and then bring it back. And obviously all writers do that to some degree, but I think I was so blown away by how this is done, and particularly then how that's been translated, because I don't know how you so accurately translate something like that from an original, without losing something. I think that's incredible. And so I was really, really blown away by what this book does. And all of that really leaves us to say that, I'll go into spoilers in a second, but what I will say is this feels very filmic, or very much like a play. And so I would love to see this be adapted for the stage or for a film. And there's a Harold Pinter play called The Birthday Party that seems to do similar things in terms of locking people in one space, you know, kind of bringing everybody together into one space, that, you know, which is what a lot of really great theatre does. And then because the characters are trapped in this scenario, trapped on stage together, all of these other things come out about them. And I would love to see this either on stage or as a film, or both. I think it's incredible. I think it's really, really fun book, and easily one of the most incredible things I've read this year. I think it's right up there with some others. I can't help but applaud it on many levels. And with that said, let's go into some spoilers. So the spoiler curtain is now being dropped, so if you do need to drop out, that is absolutely fine. But let's go into some of the spoilers. So I mentioned that these characters are trapped together in one space. We find out very quickly that this is a group of people who are essentially, to some degree, taking them hostage, waiting for a certain character, the mother, Marion, to arrive, in order to expose some long-held secrets about the family, and also to get some kind of revenge. And what happens in the sort of the tension of this book is then really incredible. I mentioned earlier about how we watch individual characters arrive at this sort of French cottage in the countryside. And so what then happens is we know that there is danger afoot. We know that, for example, somebody has just broken in, has killed the family dog in order to, you know, firstly send a message, but also to stop, you know, the dog potentially coming in and disrupting things. We know this dog has been killed, and then we watch characters having these fairly mundane thoughts about their work day or whatever else, driving up to the house, not knowing what's about to wait, you know, what's waiting for them. And there's something in that, like I mentioned with the long sentences, of how that long sentence keeps us at bay from knowing what's happening. We might have Marion's thoughts about a fight she had at work, and we're just in this cycle of thoughts around this fight, all the while she's driving closer and closer to the house, and the tension really builds there, I think. And actually, as the book goes on, we then find out that there are even more secrets that it kind of exposes. So, I mean, a play that, for example, I love, by J.B. Priestley, An Inspector Calls, I think does this really well. For example, bringing all these characters together, and then they start fighting and all these dark secrets come out. And I think for me, The Birthday Party does something really similar, in the sense that once these characters are now trapped, all of these other things come to light, which is really talking about, you know, infidelity. It's talking about the breakdown of a marriage, and, you know, who has parented a child, all of these various complicated conversation pieces. And so this birthday party has clearly been ruined, and we know this very early on, but we don't know what's going to happen next. And we don't know if it's going to be resolved peacefully, with everybody leaving and all these secrets coming to light and then everybody being okay. We don't know if these secrets are going to come out and then it's going to all be awful and everyone's going to die, or everyone's going to fall out and they're never going to talk to each other again. And there's just this one point that this book has been driving at, this one evening. And it's really beautiful, I think, the way that it pulls this off. It's hard reading at times. You know, you've got characters insulting each other, killing each other, and, you know, causing massive amounts of harm. There's a lot of violence, particularly often in ways that has this sort of this this feeling of, you know, there's a strong gendered element to a lot of it, with, you know, this group of men coming in and often, you know, for example, pinning down women, and it's deeply uncomfortable to read. It's really difficult at times to read this book, but I think that's its power, that it really interrogates the darkest parts of who we are, and of what can happen between people. And it puts it right out there in front of everybody. You know, there's no way of hiding it all with a party. The party has been destroyed, but in some ways the party has also revealed everything. It's brought all these characters together on one stage to explore absolutely everything that's gone on. We have the husband who has been seen a sex worker, and we know that his own feelings of self-loathing come into that in a big way, that he is angry at himself for doing that. He's also angry at the dynamics of it all, that there he is, a sort of a man in his, I think, 40s, paying for a woman to have sex with this woman who is from another country, and she's Ghanaian, I believe, and he feels deeply uncomfortable about his role in that power structure, that he's paying for this, and he doesn't want it, but then he also does, and he feels deeply uncomfortable but also satisfied by it. And he's caught up in so many of these dark emotions. There's this this mother, Marion, who is caught up in so many things within the family, of her difficult relationships with some of the kids, and her kind of complicated feelings about her identity, and sometimes, you know, she's criticized throughout the book a lot for her sexuality, and for having slept with other people outside of this marriage previously. And so there's this interesting dynamic that comes up of he feels, you know, that this other guy feels self-loathing at having seen a sex worker, but he largely is able to reconcile that within himself or pass it by. She is still attacked for everything else. It's such a deeply complicated book at times in terms of these characters and their motivations, but I think the real gift of this book, pun unintended for the birthday party, is that these characters are, because we are given these long rambly sentences within their heads, we are able to see in some ways their true selves. We're able to see the inner thoughts of somebody who has had these fights at work, but equally thinks that she's in the right, but is equally probably in the right, but also has these, you know, is thinking about how she's going to communicate this to her family, and is also thinking about how the strain of their relationship is that something that is, you know, insurmountable. What does this look like for the family unit? And so many complicated issues come out of this one evening. And for me, yeah, it felt like a play that you walk away from feeling profoundly changed by. I think this is a masterpiece of a book. I think it's so well done. And yeah, I'm really excited for more people to read it. I think it's an absolutely stunning piece of literature. I'm now really intrigued about Harold Pinter's The Birthday Party. I now want to read that and see if there's a kind of, you know, if there's a sort of a follow-on here, that, you know, this book has sort of borrowed or kind of been inspired by that book as well, or as a riff on it in some ways. Anyway, this is a very long, rambly way of saying I loved it. I thought it was great. Even if it does, you know, occasional bits I think did sag a teeny bit for me, but overall the effect of this book is so magnificent that I've never really been caught up in a book in this sort of way of really, you know, that kind of nothing else exists. I'm just focusing in, and I'm terrified. My heart is beating, you know, it's pounding, and I'm nervous about what's happening to these fictional people. I thought this was a really well done book, and yeah, a really fascinating one. I've been Bob Booker talking about this book. I hope you're doing really, really well. I hope if you've read this book, you've enjoyed it. And please, if you are commenting below, please try to avoid spoilers where you can, just for people who haven't read it yet. Take care and speak to you all soon. Bye-bye.